Cool, here we go. All right, hopefully you all can hear me. Thanks you all for being here. It's good to see some familiar faces and names coming in from the waiting room. Thank you all for your patience too. I just want to welcome you here to our first topic talk that the State Library of Oregon has hosted in actually about a year and a half. We started doing these kind of informally at the start of the pandemic, and they're a pretty regular thing. And we've obviously kind of maybe, momentum and priorities, and people are trying to run libraries, and things change, but it's good to have you here. I'm glad that we can kind of pull folks together virtually like this. We have an awesome slate of guests here for this. Some folks I've just met, some folks I've known for a while. But I think you'll find this really interesting, especially if you're involved with setting up programs, public programs at your library. And so we're going to be talking about what resources that you can tap into from the Oregon Folklife Network, which is down at the University of Oregon. And we have some perspectives both from an artist and both from a public library director. So I will just introduce our panelists. I guess I'll call you guys panelists, for lack of a better term. Gerardo Calderon, is a traditional musician living in the Beaverton area, I believe, Washington County. And Gerardo has been part of this Oregon Folklife Network artist roster that we'll be talking about in a little bit, and has actually done some presentations for the McMinnville Public Library, which leads me to our next panelist, Jenny Berg, the director of the McMinnville Public Library. Jenny's here to kind of share her experience working with Oregon Folklife Network and their Culture Fest, which was kind of from a pre-pandemic perspective, but we'll be talking about all of that and coming out of this pandemic too. And then also, last but not least, Emily Hartlerode, who's the acting director of the Oregon Folklife Network at the University of Oregon. And Emily is here to kind of share more about the resources that they have that I think I'm a strong believer that public libraries could really, benefit from and get some really great get some good programming mojo going. So anyway, that's like the probably the worst introduction I've ever done. So I'm gonna get out of the way and let you all hear from our panelists, and I'll hand it over to Emily.
Thanks, Ross. I'd say that was a wonderful, friendly introduction. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for being here. I overused my voice a little bit over the weekend, so apologies. I've got cough drops and throat coat tea here to keep me lubricated for the duration. But want to thank Ross for coordinating this and inviting Oregon Folklife Network and our panel to talk with you today. And also thanks to Jenny and Gerardo for joining me to bring your experiences to enrich this conversation. I'm gonna share my screen and provide a PowerPoint because I find that folk and traditional arts are in many ways much more easily seen than described, but I'll try to do a combination thereof. Are you seeing my slides? Yes, Ross says. So I'm going to give you some context on the Oregon Folklife Network, what it is, and then kind of work from big down to narrow toward the things that I think are most relevant to this group. But just for some context, the Oregon Folklife Network is the state's designated folk and traditional arts program. But what does that mean? The National Endowment for the Arts has a folk and traditional arts discipline to support underrepresented arts like Ukrainian egg decorating or Native American basketry or maritime boat building, and also specialists who can identify and articulate excellence in these community-based art forms. So state arts agencies have the option to receive National Endowment for the Arts funding for folk and traditional arts by either hiring a staff folklorist to work directly in their offices or to partner with an existing program that is already serving a statewide mission. And so in our state, the Oregon Folklife Network is Oregon Arts Commission's designated partner for folk arts programming. And this program has a history of serving the state since about the 1970s in various parent administrations. And prior to moving to the University of Oregon in 2010, it had been enjoyed about a decade of administration through the Oregon Historical Society. So now we're supported by the University of Oregon Libraries and administered by the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. So in the last 10 years, we've developed these 4 core programs shown in the overlapping circles on the right to help us carry out our twofold mission, which is to research and support the various cultural practices that are happening in our state, and then to create public programs that help Oregonians celebrate the rich and varied cultures that are here today. In the process, we've also supported some satellite partners, helping allied organizations earn their own NEA funds to hire staff folklorists. So those are those little stars that we've worked with those organizations in the past. So I'm going to introduce our 4 core programs, and I'll end with the 2 most relevant here, the Roster and Culture Fest, but I want to give you just a brief overview of the others, starting with the apprenticeship program, which is really a cornerstone of many state folk and traditional arts programs. So once a year, Oregon Folklife Network awards an average of $3,000 to $4,000 to an average of 5 mentor apprentice teams, and they spend somewhere around 9 months in intensive one-on-one lessons that are intended to help sustain their cultural practices. So a mentor and an apprentice apply as a team, and they must be from the same cultural community and apply to teach and learn an art form that is also part of their tradition, their shared community. So when I speak of culture here or that shared community, I'm thinking about things that can be ethnic, they could be tribal, occupational, regional, sacred. But the best example I give, especially for apprenticeships, which is a pretty narrow definition of transmitting cultural practice, is that if you're a Kalapuya storyteller, you need to teach Kalapuya stories to another Kalapuya tribal member. So that's the best way that we can ensure that we're working with people who are vetted by their own communities, who are working within their own communities, and we don't end up with any kind of appropriative cultural practices. Once awarded, the mentor earns the funds and the apprentice benefits from free lessons. The team commits to at least 1 public demonstration or an exhibition of their project, and they also agree to let our staff come and document what they've been doing. And that's usually through a video interview, which we then add to an artist profile page that we create for them on our website.
Hey, Emily.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think if you have some paper,
Yeah.
it's like rattling a lot on the microphone. So I just wanted to mention
Thank
that.
you. I'll
Sure.
hold it rather than rest it on my computer. Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. That's really good feedback. So you can go to our website. I'll drop in some links later on, and some of those videos that we create through the program are nestled into artist profile pages. But another thing that I wanted to highlight here, a little snapshot from Roberta Kirk's award, is that, or from her artist page, is that we will also take some of the highest success, the most excellent of these mentors, and then we can nominate them for even higher level awards. Like Roberta Kirk won the First Peoples Fund Community Spirit Award and also the Governor's Arts Award. We've been able to even nominate and get awards for artists at the National Heritage Fellowship level. So you might ask, how do we even find these traditional artists from all over the state? And one vital method has been our statewide regional survey. So in 2014, OFN started a research project to systematically survey Oregon's folklife each year, sending about 2 field workers to a geographic region to identify and interview the culture keepers of that area. So to this day, we've surveyed all of Eastern Oregon, Portland, Willamette Valley. We did the North and Southern Coast, and now we're in our 8th and final year, and we're surveying Southern Oregon. So again, these are people we're looking for who are engaged in occupational, ethnic, regional, or sacred artistic practices. So it's not enough to be a logger or a fisher in the same way that it's not enough to be Mexican or Muslim. To qualify for our programs, a culture bearer must be expressing that culture, the culture of these groups, through some form of artistic practice. So a great example of a blend of cultural aesthetic that blends with function. I'm going to skip the interview, but Brad talks a bit about how a surfboard has, it has all this function and how it's shaped and how it has to work in the water, but it also has these layers of art. It has glazes and paints and design that go into it as well. Also, our field workers have to be really excellent photographers because we want them to create photographs that you can then use in your public programs. So, and they also need to be excellent writers because we want them to be able to do a write-up about these artists that they meet in the field in ways that are really compelling and interesting, and also that you can lift out of our roster so that you can put them into your press releases or use them to introduce artists. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what Douglas Menger, the photographer here, writes about Andy Carlson. He wrote, "Bent slightly with age, Carlson can be found out back tending salmon sides in his home-built smokehouse. Like many in and around Astoria, his ancestry is part Finnish, part Swedish. Look at Carlson's hands. They speak volumes of a life shaped by tradition on the Columbia River. He was a tugboater for 12 years and a pilot boat owner-operator for 32 years. Watch his hands. Carlson skillfully fillets, cures, then hot or cold smokes sides of salmon that many locals call the best around. That spelled 8 years of trial and error with regular visits to his mentor, now passed, a master at smoking salmon, before the acknowledgement came, 'I think you've got it.' This kind of writing exemplifies the kind of biographical text that you'll find in our roster. And I'll share that roster with you in just a moment, but I wanted to also note that all of this research that we create is then imported into a database management system. ArchiveSpace is what we use. And access is overseen by a University of Oregon senior librarian and digital archivist, Nathan Georgitis. And really, Oregon's Folklife Network is one of the few around the nation that has professional archives and access that's overseen by a university research library. We're very, very fortunate to have our position here at the university, and also it allows us to engage with Indigenous faculty and staff here in a way that helps me have easy access for consultation and advice about how to approach Oregon's tribal members for interviews and make sure that we're doing that in accordance with best practices. So with all of this rich research at our fingertips, we can not only better conduct outreach for our programs, but we really want to be able to help other Oregonians access this information as well. So that's why we created the roster. So the roster is a tool, and I'm just going to use some snapshots from our website. If we have time, I'll take you out there and we can dig through it together. But this is our landing page. You can see there's a search by keyword, and then at the time of making this snapshot, we had about 253 profiles. So we've got quite a few artists around the state who can be hired into your programming. When you put in a search, this was for Mexican, these are just a few, you'd scroll, scroll, scroll and find all of the possible artists who meet that criteria. And then if you click on one of those artists, then, and I had to break this up in the screenshot, you scroll down to find that short biography again that shows up in a search, pops up at the top, and then a longer biography, which again has been approved by the artist. And so you can, if you hire somebody from the roster, you can know that whatever you pull from that is something that the artist feels good about. They feel good about how they're represented with those words. So we hope that that will help you write press releases or artist introductions. And then at the bottom of the page, which I've kind of slid over to the right side of the screen, is any description of programs that they offer, their fees, which we default to this phrase that says we recommend that all artists and culture keepers really receive at least $250 plus travel expenses for any of their time. But also artists will have their own price points as well. So we will adjust that if they ask us to have their fees in there, but we want to make sure sometimes a traditional artist doesn't really think of themselves as an artist. They just think this is what they do. And so they have a hard time assessing the value of what they do. But we're trying to get in the practice of helping culture bearers recognize the value of what they're giving and ask for those funds, and also helping to train organizations to recognize that asking for a person's time is really something that deserves compensation, much more so than just the exposure that they might get by being in your venues. So, so that's the roster. And then lastly, what we created were these Culture Fest programs. And Culture Fest was designed to follow on the heels of the survey. So we would, after visiting a region and doing some documentation of artists in there, in that area, then we would follow up with dollars that would support organizations who we invited to partner with us. And those organizations would receive funding to, most of which is supposed to go to pay for artists, and then a portion of it can be set aside for administrative costs as well. And we trust our local partners to be able to choose their own programming, to know what kind of programs are going to fit for your own communities. For Andashay and Iranian Culture Center in Portland, having actually a largely white audience was exactly the kind of outreach they wanted to help educate their non-Persian neighbors about their culture. But then you'll find alternatives like in LeGrand, the partners there really valued the opportunity to hire someone from the other side of the mountains, to hire a West African drummer to come and bring culturally diverse artists from outside the region into their workshops and to perform for locals as well. So lastly, when an organization partners with us on Culture Fest, then we give them access to this toolkit, which I will give anyone access to. It's just an easy outreach when we know we're working together. So this toolkit is also on our website. Each one of these blue boxes is a twirl down where you can find additional resources. And I'm very eager for feedback from anyone who wants to use these resources about how helpful they are, what you wish was there, or anything like that. But what we've got there are things like press release templates and photo permissions forms, audience and staff evaluations, sample invitations to your elected officials, so you can tell them, cultural trust dollars or National Endowment for the Arts, federal funding has come into your district elected official, and sometimes they will want to come and support your event, but they should at least know that you're being supported with these larger state or federal dollars. So you can find other examples of Culture Fest on our website. And again, I would love your feedback about what you find there or on the roster. And without going on any further, I'll just stop my screen share and hand it back over to Jenny and Gerardo to talk about what it has been like to actually participate in one of these programs.
I think maybe I'm up next on the agenda.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Okay. And Ross, I just literally like 10 minutes ago sent you a bunch of photos. I don't know if you have access to screen share, and it's not necessary, but I thought it might inspire some people.
Oh,
If you can
great.
do it.
No, yeah, I'll bring these up.
Okay, and I'll just talk and do it as you can and want, and we'll go through those photos that are just about they are the event that we held. So we have the McMinnville Public Library. I'm the library director of the McMinnville Public Library, and for many years prior to the pandemic, we had been holding an El Dia de los Niños celebration, which I'm guessing some of you know of, maybe all of you know about El Dia de los Niños, which is the Day of the Child. And it was started in, I believe, in Mexico City. And we have some librarians here who were really championing this event. And it started with, I think we did have some local dancers who are through our McMinnville Public High School program, and a little bit of a few events, and then we had a lot of local organizations come and table at the program. And I think I just saw through probably Oregon listserv, Emily had sent out information about a Culture Fest grant, and I thought, oh, this could work perfectly with El Dia de los Niños. So we went back and forth, and I used the Oregon Folklife directory and basically searched. It was small enough that I could, and interesting enough too, that I was able, because this was back in 2019, I was able to look through all of the various offers, and it was pretty easy to quickly say, that'll work for what we want, this won't work for what we want. And basically what we were looking for is programs that could happen for a family event outside, and that maybe could happen at multiple stations. So we had a couple different stations. Ross, if you could find, there's one of those that has the list of the events. It's basically just an easel board. So we were able to get a couple of musical groups and a dancing group that was not through the Folklife Network, but that we'd had previously at our events. And then someone who makes piñatas and sugar skulls, and then a henna artist. And so basically all these things where, okay, we'll have events that are happening, both the dancing and the music, but then also while the dancing and the music's going on, the kids could go and decorate their own sugar skull or help make the piñata. You can see here's the photo of the artist is in black there, and she brought a bunch of sugar skulls and brought the stuff to use to decorate them, and then also that the kids made the piñata there. There is a photo, and Ross, you can just go through them really quickly if you're able to, and some will be of interest and some won't be of interest. Some are better. We didn't have professional photographers take our photos, so it's literally the event. But I guess, a big part of it that I want to talk about is the fact that the using the directory was very easy. Then reaching out to the artists was also very easy. This is a tabling. This is kind of what we used to have, which you can see, okay, well, this is one thing, but that's maybe not super exciting for kids as compared to the table that has sugar skulls and piñatas that they can decorate. So we had chalk art out, also not terribly exciting, but gives you an idea about kind of the different levels of things that you can do. So reaching out to the artists was really easy. Everybody was good to communicate with, and it worked out really well. It was a well-attended event. It was great, that we were gonna, there's all the, if you go back one, there's all the events that we did, and I believe the groups that we got from Oregon Folklife, Grupo Condor, the next one down that I'm not going to butcher how to say, and you actually will hear from Gerardo from Grupo Condor, and then the Baile Folklorico is through our McMinnville High School. I'm not sure, I don't think they're part of the Oregon Folklife, but so we did sort of a combo of both. And then Monica Moreno had the Piñata and Sugar Skulls, and then we had the henna artist as well. And it was basically this, looking at a variety of cultures. We weren't particularly looking for, we weren't completely focused on Latin culture. It was wanting to bring in artists that we thought would be of interest to kids and families. So anyway, reaching out to the groups, the various artists on the Oregon Folklife Network, then communicating back and forth with them, paying them. They showed up. It was great. Actually, the guy, Rich Glauber at the top of the list, who is quite well known, and he was the one no-show. And there's Gerardo, who you will Grupo Condor, and you will hear from him soon. And I guess that's basically what I have to say. I'm a happy family enjoying our event. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end, but let's see, we'll go quickly through. I think there's a couple more photos that might be of another musical group that I believe came from Oregon Folklife. My apologies, this was long enough ago and pre-pandemic that I don't remember exactly. And back to the Piñata and Sugar Skulls. Thanks, Ross, for doing that. I appreciate it. And this was the Baile Folklorico from the high school, which is a beautiful, fun dance group. Very talented. Lots of really, really talented people.
Very cool. Sorry, it was taking me a minute to figure out how best to scroll through these photos, but
no, I really appreciate it. That was extremely last minute. Hey, will you do this?
No, these are great. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you for sending these and sharing these.
And I'm sure that went in my grant report as well. So yeah, it was great working with Emily and great working with the traditional artists. And
Well, I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat. I don't know if folks have put any questions over there, but speaking of traditional artists, we thought it would be great for today's presentation to have the perspective of a traditional artist. And so Gerardo, I don't know if you would have anything to share about, working with McMinnville and being a part of the Culture Keepers roster.
Well, yeah, let me kind of give you an introduction of my professional development. I started playing music professionally in Mexico, and I was part of a Latin American folk music ensemble. And when I moved to the States, I joined another group before we put together Grupo Condor. I lived in Boston for a couple of years, where I met amazing musicians. And I think for me, musically speaking, Boston was my school to learn the real thing about Latin American music. When we moved to Oregon, we already had a group, Grupo Condor. And it was very interesting for us because nobody knew Grupo Condor in Oregon. So we have to play on the streets and start a market and then farmers markets. And little by little, we were gaining more a credit to play Latin American music. We never consider ourselves like like Andean group, like, and there's a very, very fine line when you say, oh, I'm an Andean group, and you listen to them and like, you are not an Andean group, That's why we didn't call ourselves an Andean group, because we play music from all over Latin America, not just the Andes Mountains, which is a very different perspective, musically speaking. And so with Grupo Condor, we were able to tour after playing on the streets and things like that. We started touring all over the United States. We had a chance to go to Europe, to Canada. And but for me was too much of traveling because I have children and family. So I stopped touring after 6 years. But before I quit touring, I was getting involved playing in retirement centers, a couple libraries in Portland. So for me, it was clear that I had to do something different with what I have learned in all these years living in Boston and touring with Grupo Condor. And I decided to focus my my time on the educational side of music, and I went full time and started teaching. I became a teaching artist here in Portland through young audiences. Eventually, I got connected with the Multnomah County Library System, the Washington County Library System, the Vancouver, the library system as well, Vancouver, Washington. And between those years, I got involved with the Oregon Folklife Network, and I think you, Emily, were the one that kind of like, introduced me to the Oregon Folklife Network, and I decided to become a teaching artist and also musicologist and ethnomusicologist, because I want to share not just the instruments. I want to kind of tell what is the purpose of each instrument, and I have the chance to learn how to play. If you see in the background, I have string instruments and flutes, and I have more, drums and things like that, and so for me it's very important to share, probably not like the exact or the real rhythm, but the closest I can get, because sometimes it's very hard to find documentation that says, okay, this instrument was played this way or this other way, especially with the clay flutes, the pre-Hispanic clay flutes. This is very hard there's no documentation, so we have to kind of play by ear. But I have flutes from different areas, and as well flutes from South America. But for me, it's very important to share this to not just to the Latino community, to all communities, and I have the chance to participate in multicultural events, conferences, where I have to, talk about the instruments, and for me, it's very important, and for me also it's important to share that in schools, libraries, museums, everywhere I can, all the way with, with all my heart and with all my knowledge that I have. And it's very important for me because I have lived in the US for like 35 years. So I consider myself an Oregonian in this case. And for me, it's very important to bring the little that I know to schools or libraries. like the experience with the McMinnville Library. And it was great for me to happy to see those happy faces, when we play, or when they were watching the ballet folklorico, or when they were watching the Weka o Meyoka, which are my friends. So for me, that's a big plus, to see their smiles or their interest in the specific things, not just music, but storytelling or dance or music. And but for me, it's very important to share what I came to share in this world, And I talking about Day of Dia de los Niños, and a colleague of mine from Mexico is coming in April 28th, because we're gonna work with in Eugene. So she's coming directly from Mexico, and she's a great storyteller, great singer, and she asked me to put together a program with her, and it's gonna be, for me, it's gonna be my honor working with her. Just in case the libraries wanna know more about it, you can contact me. She's gonna be here for a couple of weeks, and but she's great. Her name is Janine, and she does theater, storytelling. She sings beautiful, and she does everything. She does cabaret theater for children and adults, and she has a degree in psychology in education, which is, she's great. So I'm honored for me to be part of her program while she's up here. And of course, I'm gonna be the taxi, the chauffeur for her, But once again, for me, it's very important to share any type of culture, because we're in a multicultural state. Let's talk about just Oregon, And I think there's no reason to block or put aside certain cultures. For me, any culture is important, In one place that I'm very happy that they're doing that is Beaverton. Beaverton is a very multicultural city, and they are acknowledging that. And I hope every city or every county in Oregon will come to the point where we don't how to call this, block any ethnic group or racial community. I think I talked too much. But if you have any questions, you can go through the Oregon Folklife Network, and we are listed there, and I'm listed there, or you can contact me directly if you want to know more about the programs that I do, the residencies that I offer, the collaborations that I've done, and collaboration that I'm gonna be working on this year, which I'm very excited about this year, because I'm gonna be able to compose music for Day of the Dead. I have to compose. I was commissioned to compose 13 songs, because there were gonna be 13 exhibits, and also Third Angle commissioned me to compose music for their sound walk program. So I'm gonna be pretty busy, but I'm glad that I'm gonna be able to share my experience as a composer, producer, and instrumentalist.
Hey, Gerardo, I've got a question.
Yeah.
And first I want to say thank you so much for sharing about your history and how you've come to know so much and have so much talent to share. And also you clarified that libraries can reach out to you directly. And I really want to stress that OFN is not attempting to be a booking agent between you and artists. We really are just trying to provide the resource. So you're in fact welcome to contact the artist directly. We put their contact information as they would like it on their roster profile pages. But my question for you, Gerardo, is one that I feel like I field a lot when people, they're excited, they have these funds, they want to hire artists, but oftentimes I'm working with organizations that are largely white settler from that heritage, and they're wanting to bring diverse artists in, but feel a little self-conscious about, like, can I ask that of you? Am I being exploitative to just ask you to come in? And so they get a little stuck with, like, how do I reach out in the most polite and respectful way? And I wonder if you have any perspective on what it's like to get an invitation, like what works for you and what helps you to feel welcome and want to stay and create a long-lasting relationship with an organization.
Yes, very interesting question. For me, and I've done that in the past, and I don't have limits, and I don't set limits, I don't get overwhelmed about going to like unknown place for me. I'm actually get excited, because I know that I'm gonna be sharing something, and I know that an organization or anything, a non-multicultural community, or whatever, I know that they have the curiosity about learning about something different. And that for me is very important, and that for me is a plus. So I'm always excited about going to new places, but I have very clear in my mind that I'm going there to share what I know, and so that's my main focus, and I have great results, because you're right. Sometimes people they hesitate they don't know how to word, their invitation, and but after we talk before they make the decision of bringing me to the community, I think the ice is already broken even before me going to, because I like to talk to people, I like to ask them, what is the purpose of this, or why, what's your name, where are you from, what's your background. So those kind of things for me are very important. It's not like, okay, I charge this much, if I don't get paid this, I'm not going. And also I'm very flexible with money. I know money is important, because we have to, live, eat. But for me, that's not much. If an organization say, we would like to come, but we have no money, that's cool. But if an organization say, well, but we can promote your music, and so they go different directions, like that doesn't work for me. I'd rather them tell me, I have no money, will you come? I say, of course, because for me, culture, talking about music, culture is very important for me, to share. And of course, sometimes I get paid more than I was expecting, and I'll take that, with my arms open. But for me, it's more, I see my work more as a cultural sharing, and this is what makes me happy, to share with my instruments with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's really helpful. I heard a couple of things. I heard that that it is nice to be seen as a whole person and not just a person that's contracted to come and do a job, but it's nice to, how is your family? How are you? How's your community? And that kind of level of interaction is welcome. Sometimes libraries might be used to hiring people who are more about the business, but I find that a lot of folk and traditional artists like to be their whole self when they come to a place. And
Yeah,
so,
and it is important.
yeah.
to be like that.
And although money is not always the bottom line deal breaker for you, I want to also mention that the Folklife Network's Culture Fest funds, now this year we're finishing up in the Southern Oregon region, so we will be targeting organizations who want to create programs in Southern Oregon. So if you're a Southern Oregon librarian, definitely reach out to us. But after that, we're going to be looking at other models for how to fund. Maybe we would be focusing on libraries specifically, or historical societies, or I'm interested to know if the region by region concept works for people, but we're at a point where we get to kind of hit the reset button. But I want libraries to know that another funding option is your county cultural coalitions. Those find out the Oregon Cultural Trust has county cultural coalitions, and they grant money to organizations in your county. So that might be an option for you. Sometimes it's just a few $1,000s, but that's all the Culture Fest is also, is a few $1,000s to help you pay some artists and pay for some admin time. So that's a good funding source. Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, I think that's the right link on the Cultural Trust's website if you're interested in getting in touch with your own local county cultural trust. I'm pretty sure that page will get you there. Well, I just want to say thank you, Emily, Jenny, and Gerardo, for being here and for sharing sharing all the things you've shared today. I think this is fantastic. I hope our attendees and folks watching this after the fact will find this helpful in thinking about your library programming needs. And we probably have, I think we have a few minutes if folks have any questions for the panel. I think we can go until about 11 if that works for everyone.
And I don't know if, Gerardo, I know you've got a catalog of CDs and things too. If you want to put a link in the chat about where people can go to find your CDs, that might be something they could acquire into their library collections, or just buy for gifts.
Yeah, actually, I'm writing all my information in the chat. Just my website, my email, my phone number, my name, and so they can reach me out through that. And my music is, like now everything is digital. It's kind of hard for the libraries to even have CDs. One day I went to before the pandemic, I went to a library, and not to school, and I offer. We actually we have a book, and we wrote a couple years ago. A couple years, like about 6. And the book is comes with a disc. In the libraries, I know the school was like, we don't even have CD players anymore. So, but we're updating the book website so where people can go in and download the audio from. But yeah, and just through my website, and my music is in all the platforms. Yeah.
I just want to say we will be, if you're watching this after the fact, or if you can't take notes right now, we'll be sharing this info along with Emily's slides, maybe along with Jenny's photos from her Culture Fest, if that's okay, Jenny. And we will put that up on our guide, which I'll just put in the chat right now just for folks, but we'll put these resources up on this page at the State Library.
Okay.
Oh, I should mention Kathy Street. Thanks for being here, Kathy. She had a great question that I think probably goes to Emily, and I'll just read it out for the sake of the recording. Kathy asks, how were the artists found? I'm assuming for the roster.
Yeah.
I see Umatilla County has several, but Morrow County has only a few.
Fewer. Yeah. That's a great question, Kathy. And it leads me to an answer and a follow-up. All the artists on the roster, I would say 90% of them are found through that survey where I was explaining we send field workers out to various regions year by year. We kind of systematically went around the state. And so the way field workers find those connections is really quite organic. So we might have a few leads in an area, and then they might conduct a couple of interviews and ask those folks, who else do you know who does this kind of work? There's also some kind of landscape clues. You might see murals that depict a certain culture group. You might see ethnic food restaurants or grocery stores, and they'll go in and talk to the owners of those shops and find out, where are you from and where is your community and who is doing the kind of artistic cultural practices that help you sustain these communities. So and the practices here. So that's the process by which we find artists, but it's short term. It's just a few weeks that they go out and spend in these communities. So our roster is not exhaustive at all. Some people stumble across us and apply themselves, self-nominate to be on the roster. And so we have an application process. So we can go through a similar kind of interviewing, learning more about how a person learned and where they're from and how they practice their culture. So there are other ways to get on the roster. And then actually Culture Fest is a great way too for us to learn about more artists. So Jenny mentioned that she hired other people who were not on the roster, and those partnerships with Culture Fest partners help us because you know the people in your communities. You might know more people than we know in your community. So you can nominate them or help us make that connection. So we're hoping to always grow this roster and make it more and more comprehensive and reflective of who's in our community today. And that's changing every year. So please do, if you know people in your county, Kathy, or anyone else on this call, please send them our direction or send me their link, and I'd be super happy to interview them and help them get onto the roster.
And this is just a comment in the chat, but this is such a great resource. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm looking forward to looking through the roster of artists. Fantastic. And I will definitely make sure this link gets on our page after the fact, but Shannon from Multnomah County Library posted a link to Gerardo's music that they have curated on the library's local music project, which, by the way, I'm a huge personal fan of Multnomah's local music project. So thanks for sharing that. Anyway, Emily, Gerardo, Jenny, thanks so much again for being here. If folks have other questions, we can put your contact information, I guess, up. I'm also happy kind of relaying questions or inquiries. If folks want to reach out to me, totally happy to do that. And thanks everybody for attending. And I guess it's about 1 minute to 11, so we'll call it good for now. I'll stop the recording, but I can hang out for a couple more minutes if folks want to chat or have any last minute questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Gerardo and
Thank
Emily.
you.